This is In the Loop. I'm Christian Bryant. If you've got thoughts on the cost of housing in America these days, and honestly, who doesn't, this is the show for you. Here are some other stories we're digging into over the next hour. Our smartphones are often our window to the world, but they can also be a window into our own personal lives and data for governments and corporations. We've got a deep dive into cell phone surveillance. Plus, what's behind the Great Resignation? We're looking at the key factors and impacts for the millions of Americans calling it quits. But first, our top story takes us to the increasingly wild world of online real estate. Have you ever found yourself just casually skimming through sites like Zillow or Redfin just to see what's out there? Of course you have, it's the pandemic. Even if it's way out of budget, actually, especially if it's out of budget. Real estate sites like these have been steadily growing in popularity. Though they were hit hard at the start of the pandemic, their stocks have been bouncing back strong. Last year, more than 7 million households moved to a different county. That's about 500,000 more than in 2019. Most of them left big cities. But there's recently been some high-profile speculation about the effects that sites like Zillow are having on the housing market. Like this viral TikTok with over 5.5 million views accusing Zillow of manipulating the market to drive housing prices up and turn a profit on houses they bought.
They just know what zip code is looking at what zip code and how much those people can afford. Everyone's looking at this one zip code and everybody seems to be able to afford this certain amount. And let's say that billion-dollar company uses that information to go into that zip code and start purchasing houses.
Then, just this past Sunday, Zillow announced it would end its massive home buying practice. They claim it's to clear its backlog of inventory and not because of the scrutiny. Meanwhile, similar websites are pressing on, like opendoor.com, which reportedly bought 8,500 homes in the second quarter. There's a lot to unpack here, but first, let's explain how these sites actually work. These sites are known as iBuyers. For a fee, they'll buy your home for cash, let you pick your move-out date, and help you avoid the huge headache of having to show and sell your home. You might not get as much money as your home is really worth, but the benefit here is the speed. You can move out in a matter of days instead of months. But here's where critics are calling foul. Some competitors, like local real estate agencies, are accusing these companies of buying up a ton of homes in a neighborhood and artificially driving the prices up when they try to resell them. Other critics, like that viral TikTok, go even further to suggest that these sites are analyzing user data, looking at which zip codes are popular to target and how much people are willing to spend there. To those critics, this practice makes the insanely competitive housing market we're in right now even more competitive and costly. With home prices already at record highs, some houses are getting bought hundreds of thousands, if not millions, over listing price. It all sounds pretty dastardly on paper, but this is In the Loop. We're not just gonna take a TikTok at its word. So what's really going on here? First of all, iBuyers are clearly not the core reason for the current housing crisis. They make up only a tiny fraction of the astronomical $36 trillion real estate market. Even Zillow's own most generous estimate was that the four largest iBuyers, including itself at the time, still only account for just 1% of all homes purchased nationwide, though it's at or above 5% in 4 major cities. Right now, iBuyers don't have the market share to meaningfully distort prices. Regarding the claim about using our data, there isn't evidence it's being used to determine which houses the companies buy. We do know that iBuyers prefer houses that need little renovation but aren't mega mansions. In other words, they focus on the middle of the market. And are they buying up homes like crazy? Yeah, but they're definitely not alone. More than 200 companies and investment firms, including big names like Blackstone and JP Morgan, are buying single-family homes for rent or flip across the nation. And it's not only a few houses. In one example, an entire neighborhood in Texas, an entire neighborhood was sold to a property investment firm. One real estate consultant firm estimated that in many top markets, about 1 in 5 houses sold would be bought by someone who will never move in. Think about that for a second. That means a young couple trying to buy their first home could be competing with JP Morgan. So are iBuyers like Opendoor, Redfin, and until recently Zillow responsible for the surge in housing prices? No. Are they buying up houses like crazy to flip them? Yeah, but by no means are they pioneering that practice. There are a lot of factors behind the current housing market crisis, and you may be wondering, where does that leave the average consumer in all of this? someone just looking to sell or buy a new house. All right, we're not done talking about this housing crisis, but we wanted to bring somebody in to give us even more information. Today we have Shane Phillips, the author of The Affordable City and the Housing Initiative Project Manager at UCLA Lewis Center. Shane, thanks so much for joining us on ITL.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
So I want to take you back about 15 years. I don't know if you remember the run for mayor in New York City. Jimmy McMillan had the rent is too damn high party. And I want to start with this. Why are housing prices so damn high? Break it down for us.
I feel like that campaign was like right around the time I was getting interested in housing. So it's a good intro.
How about that?
And, I'm sure I'll say this more than once, but there are a lot of things happening. So I do want to be very clear and sure to not give the impression that there's one policy or program that's responsible for all the problems we have, but to focus on what I think is the most important and probably the most fundamental issue, and one we also happen to have a lot of control over locally. This is just because we're not building enough homes. If you look at a chart of national housing production over the past 50 or 60 years, the overall trend is just down, 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 year after year. I think that surprises a lot of people living in cities in particular, because it feels like so much is happening. We see all of these cranes and skyscrapers going up, but that's largely because the locations of this development have moved. And it used to be that a large share of homes were being built in the suburbs, and even beyond the suburbs, on the green fields, the agricultural land, these kinds of things. And that has kind of dried up for a variety of reasons. What I am saying is if we don't build, solving all of the other problems that we have to address alongside of it is going to be extremely difficult, if not impossible.
Yeah, so I'm curious to know, what role do zoning laws kind of play in this dynamic that we're seeing? You've mentioned that there isn't one thing that you can point to that is kind of making this situation what it is.
They're the central thing, I would say. So zoning is the laws that local jurisdictions have in place that say what you can do with a parcel of land. They say how many units you can build on it. They say how many square feet of total structure can be built on it, how high it can be, how far it has to be set back from its neighboring parcels. We've spent the past, say, 50 or 60 years, maybe even further back, tightening those restrictions and reducing the amount of housing that can be built legally in our cities. And so we engineered this scarcity, and we're really living with those consequences now.
What sort of solutions would you put forth to help us get out of this mess?
I think we really need to just open up a lot of places to what Daniel Paralak has called, and many others now call, missing middle housing. We need to be building a lot more triplexes, fourplexes, courtyard apartment buildings, 10-unit apartment buildings, stuff in the middle that is not so, it fills in those gaps for one thing, but it's also a lot more affordable. So unlike single family detached housing, you're able to split the land costs between more households. But unlike, say, skyscrapers, the actual construction cost is a lot lower. Say also just eliminating parking requirements. I think the big one is some form of rent stabilization. And rent stabilization has not a great reputation, but we've learned through a variety of mistakes what works and what doesn't, and how to protect people once they move into their homes, protect them from the swings in the market so that they have some certainty about what to expect in the future. And then the third thing, because I got to cover all three themes in my book, is subsidy. We got to spend a lot more money on housing. And the reality is we spend much less on renters, even though renters on average earn half as much income as homeowners. They're much poorer, and yet we spend much less on them. And so we need to kind of go back to the way things were not so long ago, 30, 40, 50 years ago, sort of the pre-Reagan era, and spend a lot more on the construction of new income restricted housing for lower income households, and also rent assistance, so that we just kind of give people money to choose where they want to live and are able to do so at an affordable price.
You just laid out your agenda for solving the housing crisis. We appreciate you, spending some time with us on that. Shane Phillips is the author of The Affordable City and the Housing Initiative Project Manager at UCLA Lewis Center. Shane, thanks so much, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Coming up next, we run through some of the top trending stories online, including a very old, very wobbly, and very prophetic little pug. Yeah, really, you don't want to miss this. Have you been planning your day around horoscopes from Noodle, the pug on TikTok? In case you missed it, if Noodle goes limp, it's a no bones day, meaning you should probably just stay in. If he sits up straight, it's a bones day, and it's time to get up and get after it. Today is a bones day for me, hence why I am sitting up and at work, but I can't promise I won't go limp every commercial break. Here's what else is trending on social media. The royal family is known for being particularly tight-lipped when it comes to political discussions, but Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, is breaking with tradition again to advocate for paid family leave. In a letter to Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Markle said no family should have to choose between earning a living and having the freedom to take care of their child or a loved one or themselves, as we would see with a comprehensive paid leave plan. Paid leave should be a national right. The letter was released through the group Paid Leave for All, and it's a pretty timely message. Senate Democrats are pushing Biden to expand the family and medical paid leave program in the budget reconciliation bill. Biden said earlier in the week that the current legislation would include only 4 weeks, which is down from the initial 12 weeks that were proposed. Just as an FYI, the US is the only wealthy, developed nation without a federal mandate for paid family or medical leave. The House voted Thursday to hold former White House chief strategist Steve Bannon in contempt of Congress for refusing to testify despite being subpoenaed by the House January 6th Select Committee. They ordered him to testify last week about his potential role in the lead-up to the attack of the U.S. Capitol, but Bannon wasn't feeling that, citing Trump's claim of executive privilege. That's a pretty murky concept that presidents have used in the past, but Bannon didn't work in the White House during the time frame in question, January 6th. He was, however, reportedly in contact with then President Trump before the 6th, which makes his testimony and any relevant documents of interest to the committee. In testimony Thursday before the House vote, Attorney General Merrick Garland didn't commit to prosecuting Bannon, but said the Justice Department would apply the facts and the law to make a decision. Dozens of employees walked out of Netflix's Los Angeles and Silicon Valley offices Wednesday to protest the company's handling of its release of a recent Dave Chappelle comedy special. People inside and outside Netflix have criticized Chappelle's jokes about transgender people, saying they promote transphobia. Employees and protesters called on the company to hire more trans and non-binary executives, show creators, and stars. Netflix CEO Ted Sarandos defended airing the special, but said in interviews this week that he screwed up in his handling of the situation, and he should have realized the decision to air the special would upset employees. Smartphones often quite literally hold the keys to most of our lives. Not only can they reveal your most recent locations, but they got your social media, emails, photos, and likely bank account information. The good thing is, for the most part, that information is securely yours. But what happens if someone else gets their hands on it? An investigation found that military-grade spyware licensed by an Israeli firm has been used to hack smartphones belonging to some journalists and others. Our partners at the Washington Post video team put a deep dive together to better show you how exactly this is all happening and the concerns it raises.
All of us live our lives on our cell phones. We're completely connected to it. It's a sort of an appendage at this point. So the ability to get into that is almost like being able to get into your brain. What we're really learning here is that in country after country, a tool that could legitimately be used for law enforcement or for counterintelligence is being used against people it should never be used against. NSO is a spyware company. It's a private company, it's an Israeli private company. They make malicious software that governments use to target your smartphone and gather data out of it, and they sell this to governments all over the world. What we have is a kind of asymmetrical warfare, where the people who have the money and the power politically are able to use this against those they perceive as threats. So it really does impede some of the actual tools of transparency that we rely on, which is the ability to gather information, the ability to spread information without fear of being put in prison. What NSO allows its customers to do is to break into your devices, usually your smartphone, and do anything on it you can do. They can get your location, they can get all your emails, they can get all of your social media, they can get all your pictures, they can get all of your video, they can turn on your microphone, they can turn on your camera. So it provides an incredibly granular map, not just of your life and your interests, but also of your relationships. And so for a government spy agency, to be able to get into someone's smartphone is an incredibly powerful tool.
Jamal, he was always believe we are watched.
They are afraid of change, whether the change coming from democracy or from revolution of any sort.
In the case of Jamal Khashoggi, who was the Saudi columnist who wrote for the Washington Post before he was murdered in 2018 when he went into the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. He was kidnapped and murdered and dismembered by a Saudi assassination team. And we wanted to know whether Pegasus had been used to spy on him or on people around him. We couldn't get his phone, but we got the phones of the two women closest to him. And digital forensics on their phones showed that Pegasus operators tried to infect the cell phones of both his wife and fiancé at the time. We know for certain that they succeeded to penetrate one of those phones. I think Khashoggi had a notion that he was under surveillance because in interviews we were told by his wife that he always had different apps for her to use, that he talked with her about being under surveillance, and so they switched the type of communications that went on between them.
He started to remove some special picture from his phone because he used to take a lot of photo for us. He left selfie. And there is one picture very special. We don't want any human to see it. And he used to look at it when I'm not with him. He said, I delete it. I say, why? He said, Hanan, they can hack my phone and I don't want them to see my wife.
One of the most concerning things about our reporting is that it's clear there's now what they call zero-click attacks. That means a malicious actor sends something to my iPhone, for example. It comes to iMessage, but it never appears on iMessage, right? I don't see it, I don't hear it. There's no tip-off that there's something bad happening, and yet it can get in and it can begin to peel back the layers of all the security on your iPhone. And so you don't have to make a mistake. Really, all of us are vulnerable. Even people with recent devices, even people who do the right things and like keep up their passwords and make sure that their software is updated, this kind of technology can still get into your devices and sort of turn your life upside down on a table in front of people you'll never meet. When you think about it, it's vastly more powerful than what we think of as sort of wiretapping. Being able to listen in on a conversation, great, but being able to get all of your conversations that you've had on your device, all of the places you've been, the pictures you take, the pictures you receive from other people, that provides a very granular glimpse into your life and your world that really is not available in any other way. As a private company, they're free to operate how they want to. There are some regulations that the Israeli government puts on them, and the Israeli government monitors who they sell this to. But once it's sold, the system really belongs to the customers themselves. And so how they use it, whether they use it to track someone who might be delivering a car bomb, or whether they use it to spy on their girlfriend, like, there's no one really watching that, I think, is the bottom line. When these sorts of stories have come up in the past, NSO will never confirm who a client country is and what the surveillance is, but they also will say, we use this to fight terrorists, we use this to fight organized crime, and all those things may be true. The problem is the lack of guardrails around this.
The psychological impact of just knowing the technology's out there is kind of bad enough, but its real power is in the information it gives people with bad motives and with weapons and with the ability to not just stop you from doing your job, but to kill you and your family members. And it just gives the state even more power over innocent people.
This is I love you, he wrote it in a message.
Jamal was very depressed, talked about suicide, was worried about being targeted, while at the same time, Hanan is interrogated by the Emirati government about her relationship with Jamal.
They told me about one WhatsApp message, and when I sent this WhatsApp message, I did delete it immediately, and they told me the whole message. And this make me not comfortable how much they know.
They put her under house arrest twice, they threatened her family, and they threatened her, all to try to find out what she knew about an alleged network of people that Khashoggi was putting together that they thought was there to overthrow the monarchy in Saudi Arabia.
He was conscious about this, which is make me feeling, yes, I'm being watched, and I start to symbol with him. He started sending me any app, free app, to talk to, like emo, you call, these things. I didn't know it before, he taught me. But we feel more comfortable when I have a layover in any another country and we can speak.
This whole spying apparatus has a chilling effect on people who already feel like they're under threat because they're in a minority now in a lot of these authoritarian countries. And then to know that their phones can be spied on without them ever detecting it adds to their, in some cases, trauma.
Jamal didn't carry a gun. Jamal didn't carry a bomb. Jamal wasn't a terrorist. Jamal carried his pen and his idea. And this is not dangerous to be killed.
Many thanks to the folks at the Washington Post for that reporting. When you're back, we'll tell you how some cities decided to take their stimulus money during the pandemic and use it to restart some projects that were paused. We'll see you on the other side. Welcome back to In the Loop. During this pandemic, most of us were lucky enough to get at least one stimulus check. Some needed it to help them make ends meet and pay for things like food or bills. Others may have used it to help pay off some debt. Cities also got their own stimulus money, and now it's being used to jumpstart a number of projects that were previously put on hold. National correspondent Dan Grossman shows us what that money is helping fund across the country.
If you've ever been part of a team,
yeah, see, we're coming up over here around the bridge.
You can understand the empowerment it can bestow.
I go around and I pick up the bags of trash that they tie up and leave on the side of the road.
It cultivates coordination, planning, agency.
I won't tell you the worst thing I found, though.
Things those on Barb Alfin's team have lacked to some degree for quite some time.
This crew is like the best crew ever because they're thorough. You know, they really want to get the job done, and they show it. Do you guys have enough bags?
4 days a week for 4 hours a day, This group of men and women experiencing homelessness goes around Pueblo, Colorado, picking up and disposing of trash.
The weeds are pretty tall around here.
It nets people like Ron here $50 a day. Money that doesn't come from the city, but from the federal government's American Rescue Plan.
Well, you know, I heard about it, like I said, through the, outside, and some people told me about it, but I figured, man, it's a great way to try to, kind of beautify the city a little bit, get out and do something with it.
But that's just how the money is being used here in Pueblo. In Palm Beach Gardens, Florida, the city is using stimulus money to pay for the construction of a new golf course. In Phoenix, the money is being used to care for vulnerable populations like vets, seniors, and refugees. And in Cincinnati, stimulus money is being used in part on youth programs that work to prevent suicide among LGBTQ teens. It's all part of the $195 billion given to cities nationwide as part of the American Rescue Plan.
For the residents and the homeless, it gives them a little bit of money, a little bit of self-gratification, does a little bit for their confidence and stuff.
Ron Navarro is the cleanup projects manager in Pueblo. And he says the money helps, but it's that second part, the self-gratification part, that really makes the difference. And he would know, for Ron was also homeless himself.
I think it just does something to a person to maybe get them going to where they look for a steady job. They start to get a little bit of money, and hey, maybe I need to get off the streets and clean up a little bit or whatever.
Driving down the street, people will honk at us, and say thank you, and I think that's good for them, and I mean, it makes me feel like, oh, I'm really doing something good.
This cleanup project has gone on for 6 weeks, with about 6 weeks left to go.
All right, Bradley, where you at?
Its effects, however, have the potential to be timeless. In Pueblo, Colorado, I'm Dan Grossman.
Many thanks to Dan for that one. Quick question. How long we been in this pandemic now? Year and a half? Seems like longer, doesn't it? We might be getting used to some aspects of this pandemic, but there are lingering impacts that are affecting the country's workforce. After the break, we look at the so-called Great Resignation. There have been just a few periods in time when we've used the word great to describe some really meaningful societal shifts, like the Great Awakening, the Great Depression, and now we have the Great Resignation. A lot of people are quitting their jobs, y'all, and it's a pretty big deal. This shift comes during a global pandemic that has a lot of people rethinking what's important to them, including health and safety and working conditions. The U.S. Department of Labor recently released data that shows that 4.3 million U.S. workers quit their jobs in August, which is 1.5 million more people than in August of 2020. And if we go back to April of this year, we've seen 20 million people quit their jobs within a 5-month span. What exactly is prompting people to leave their jobs in record numbers? A lot of people were worried about COVID and no longer wanted to work in environments that put them at risk. Others wanted to try a different type of job, or wanted more flexibility, or more money, or all three. The resignation rates are especially high in hospitality and food service. I mean, look at Burger King. Their employees said, "We quit in the most in-your-face way possible." So clearly, people are over it. Those employees reportedly quit over long hours, low pay, and high temperatures in the kitchen. It seems other workers have the same idea. In the past year, overall job openings have increased by 62%. To combat this, some places are stepping it up and offering more competitive pay with the hopes of attracting new people to their industries or just keep people around. Economists are saying if you want a new job, now's the time. With this shift, some companies are desperate for employees, and workers have more power to ask for what they want. The Great Resignation also goes hand in hand with the supply chain shortage. We are running low on people to help make and deliver our goods. Newsy economics correspondent Bianca Fascini has been consistently helping us break down what's going on with our economy, and she's here to tell us more about the impact of this many people leaving their jobs. Bianca, can you give us some more context?
Hey, Christian, it is true that more Americans are leaving their jobs than ever before, and this phenomenon could spell trouble for certain parts of the economy ahead of the holidays. This is happening in a lot of different industries, But retail is being hit especially hard. In fact, 721,000 workers quit their retail jobs in August, second only to job losses in hospitality. Now, supply chain stress is already taking a toll on the retail industry ahead of the holiday season. Many businesses might not be able to stock their shelves, in-store or online. So a lack of workers during that typically busy time could cause an even bigger headache for employers, which is why many of them are stepping up their job offers. Take Amazon, for example. The company recently announced it's hiring 150,000 workers with a starting pay of $18 an hour, or higher depending on where you live. A $3,000 sign-on bonus is also included in that. Other retailers like Walgreens and CVS announced wage raises too. Now, just a couple of years ago, these increases would have been unthinkable. So it really shows how much the pandemic has changed the economy and how much leverage workers have over employers.
As we've mentioned, restaurants have been hit hard by the labor and supply chain shortages. But working moms could be a solution to this problem. Now that kids have gone back to school, experts expect to see more moms picking up part-time restaurant jobs since they offer pretty flexible schedules. National reporter Usher Qureshi talks to a mom who's re-entered the workforce and is helping one restaurant get back on their feet.
Hey guys, so what can I get for you today?
At a time when most restaurants were struggling to stay afloat, the Breakfast Club, a brunch spot in Des Moines, opened its doors during the pandemic.
It's really hard right now.
A third of restaurant owners in Iowa have lost staff to other industries and don't expect them to come back. For Breakfast Club partner Josh Holderness, that means a sick call from an employee can turn things upside down.
We just don't have the people that you can call on a moment's notice to maybe come in and cover those shifts.
But as restaurants, bars, and other businesses in the hospitality industry struggle to find workers, new research suggests it's about to get even worse. According to a jobless survey of nearly 14,000 wage earners, 58% of restaurant and hotel employees intend to quit their jobs by January 1st.
We're really in a mode where we have to attract back workforce, but also attract new workforce into our industry.
Jessica Dunker is the president and CEO of the Iowa Restaurant Association. She says the restaurant industry as a whole is hoping an influx of working moms could help restaurants recover from worker shortages.
We really have some powerful, unique value proposition to offer potential employees.
With women accounting for half the restaurant workforce, flexible schedules could lure some working moms back to the ranks.
Sausage or bacon?
Working moms like Nina Pinelli, who quit her last job during the pandemic in part because juggling a rigid work schedule while raising 2 remote learners became untenable.
It was tough. It was hard to manage that school online, job as well. It was hard.
With her twin daughters back at school, Pinelli returned to the workforce as a server here at the Breakfast Club.
They open early and close at a great time.
All right.
To offer me that opportunity to go get my kids, pick them up.
Still, employment overall in the food industry is down nearly 1 million jobs from pre-pandemic levels. And with Americans quitting in record numbers, there may not be enough women out there to fill the void.
Not yet. Boy, we are looking hard, and we know that we have to really market what we can bring to the table as employers to attract those high-quality workers back into our industry.
Scrambled egg?
Reporting from Des Moines, Iowa,
Perfect.
I'm Usher Qureshi.
Much appreciated, Usher. After the break, we're bringing you a preview of the upcoming episode from In Real Life, our weekly documentary series. We're taking a look at Puerto Rico's power crisis. We'll see you in just a sec.
It's time to see the bigger picture, widen the lens, narrow the divide.
We must love and support one another!
That support is shifting, and it's shifting toward concern for climate.
It's about the whole community stepping up to help.
Not everything is left or right, good or bad.
The human capacity for change is so inspiring.
It's time to look closer at the whole story.
A hurricane don't care what your color is or how much money you make. It affects us all.
It's time to ask, why?
The whole goal is to point people to something bigger.
Introducing a new point of view. Yours. Newsy. Watch free 24/7.
A power crisis in Puerto Rico is leaving hundreds of thousands of Americans in the dark. Public protests on the island have really heated up in recent weeks, and now Newsy's own reporting is showing the extent of the problem. A Newsy data analysis of reported power outages last month showed blackouts in at least 51 of Puerto Rico's 78 municipalities, even on the power grid's best day there. That finding comes from Newsy's original documentary series, In Real Life, which dives into a different story each week. Here's a clip from this week's episode on Puerto Rico's power crisis.
Blackouts have been a part of life in Puerto Rico for as long as many people here can remember. But this summer, a new private company called Luma came in to run the grid. Continued blackouts, labor issues, and skepticism over the way the company came in led to big protests in Puerto Rico. On social media, some people call the company Hurricane Luma. And multiple mayors are reacting to the blackouts like they would to a natural disaster by declaring a state of emergency.
Well, there's no streetlights here, so, oh my Lord, what's happening? Scary. I guess I'm going. Okay. Whew. So we are on our way right now to interview the mayor of this little town called Isabela. He had to declare a state of emergency a few months ago because people in his town were facing such terrible power outages for days at a time, and he said the power company wasn't doing anything about it. So we're headed over there right now, and we just got a phone call from his press person telling us that they're out of power. They've been out of power for hours now.
At the mayor's office, we found local government employees sitting in the dark without air conditioning, waiting for the lights to come back on. They told us half the town didn't have power.
There's just people, they're having to use hand fans to stay cool. And it's 90 degrees today. It's 90 degrees.
You just watched a clip from the upcoming episode of In Real Life on Puerto Rico's power crisis. Here to talk to us about that episode is Natasha Del Toro. Natasha, thanks so much for joining us on ITL.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, for sure. The first question I have, what is it about Puerto Rico that makes blackouts so common on the island? I know that we talked about natural disasters and things of the like, but even before that, what is it about the makeup of the island that makes blackouts just such a common occurrence?
Well, for one, the grid is very old. This is what our documentary gets into, is looking at how, there are decades and decades of where there's been just a lack of maintenance, and obviously it's an island, so it's going to be harder to fix things, if you have to bring in a lot of materials and you have to import all of the fuel in Puerto Rico.
Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico in 2017, but it seems like the island is still very much feeling the impacts of that storm. What can you tell us about that?
I was there on the island after Hurricane Maria in 2017. I saw the devastation. I saw power lines that were mangled and poles that were down, and it looked like a bomb had gone off on the island. When you go there now, you don't see that, but the grid, it was basically propped back up, kind of how it was initially. The money that they were going to, the billions of federal dollars that they were going to spend to fix the island, it just hasn't arrived yet. So in that way, it's still fragile, and it doesn't take much for the power to go out. A storm, rain, any number of things, and it's really frustrating for people there. We're talking about American citizens, 3.5 million Puerto Ricans, Americans that that are having to work around their daily lives without regular power. It's just a shame, though, that they haven't been able to, the government, the local government, the federal government hasn't been able to figure out sort of a better solution for Puerto Rico. You know, even entrepreneurs who've come in with really good ideas. I mean, after Hurricane Maria, there was a lot of attention on, okay, how do we build back different? How do we build back better? It was an opportunity to build back better.
Natasha Del Toro, she worked on the upcoming episode of In Real Life on Puerto Rico's power crisis. Thank you so much for joining us.
Christian, thank you so much for having me and for talking and allowing me to talk to your viewers about our story.
You can watch that full episode Sunday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern right here on Newsy. In the meantime, vibe check. How we doing? I don't know why I ask these questions. I can't hear y'all. But if you're still there, we've got a little more ITL for you. We're closing the loop with today's top stories as soon as you're back. In case you missed it, let's take another brief look at our top stories from today. Real estate sites like these have been steadily growing in popularity. These sites are known as iBuyers. For a fee, they'll buy your home for cash, let you pick your move-out date, and help you avoid the huge headache of having to show and sell your home. Some competitors, like local real estate agencies, are accusing these companies of buying up a ton of homes in a neighborhood and artificially driving the prices up when they try to resell them. To those critics, this practice makes the insanely competitive housing market we're in right now even more competitive and costly. So are iBuyers like Opendoor, Redfin, and until recently Zillow responsible for the surge in housing prices? No. Are they buying up houses like crazy to flip them? Yeah, but by no means are they pioneering that practice.
You know, there are a lot of things happening, so I do want to be very clear and sure to not give the impression that there's one policy or program that's responsible for all the problems we have, but to focus on what I think is the most important and probably the most fundamental issue, and one we also happen to have a lot of control over locally. This is just because we're not building enough homes. We don't build. Solving all of the other problems that we have to address alongside of it is going to be extremely difficult, if not impossible.
A lot of people are quitting their jobs, y'all, and it's a pretty big deal. This shift comes during a global pandemic that has a lot of people rethinking what's important to them, including health and safety and working conditions. The U.S. Department of Labor recently released data that shows that 4.3 million U.S. workers quit their jobs in August, which is 1.5 million more people than in August of 2020. And if we go back to April of this year, we've seen 20 million people quit their jobs within a 5-month span.
This is happening in a lot of different industries, but retail is being hit especially hard. In fact, 721,000 workers quit their retail jobs in August, second only to job losses in hospitality. Now, supply chain stress is already taking a toll on the retail industry ahead of the holiday season.
What exactly is prompting people to leave their jobs in record numbers? A lot of people were worried about COVID and no longer wanted to work in environments that put them at risk. Others wanted to try a different type of job or wanted more flexibility or more money or all three. Economists are saying if you want a new job, now's the time. With this shift, some companies are desperate for employees and workers have more power to ask for what they want. Thanks for hanging with us. Make sure you keep tuning in for more In the Loop. But for now, Newsy has plenty of other incredible shows for you to watch in the meantime. I'm Christian Bryant. We'll see you next time.